The story of Izuku. The hero Tailong. Complete story. Part 2. Several days had passed since Izuku's arrival. Now we find Rumi, who was very excited, barely able to contain her emotions. She was just minutes away from receiving her title and couldn't wait to see the epic entrance her boyfriend had promised. Although she was also somewhat nervous, as Izuku sometimes didn't know when to set limits. The hall where the ceremony would take place was large, filled with light, and decorated for this important day at UA Academy. Murmurs of family and friends filled the air as they eagerly awaited the graduation ceremony. "I can't believe the day has finally come," exclaimed Rumi, looking around with sparkling eyes of excitement. "I know, it's been a long journey," replied one of her classmates, Kana Tsutsumi, who stood beside her. "But we've all worked hard to get here." "I hope Izuku doesn't do something too crazy," said Rumi, nervously laughing. "Although, coming from him, I don't know what to expect." Kana patted her shoulder. "I'm sure it will be amazing. After all, it's Izuku. He always knows how to make an entrance." On the stage, Director Nizu and All Might himself were handing out hero certificates to the students. As they called out each graduate one by one, every student received their certificate while the director and the most famous hero offered words of encouragement and recognition. "Look, there goes Ryuko," said Kana, pointing to the stage. "Now, please welcome the heroine Ryuko," announced Nizu. A young woman with blonde hair and an elegant bearing began to walk slowly towards the stage. It was Ryuko, whose presence exuded grace and fierceness. The audience applauded enthusiastically as she ascended the stage stairs, her hero uniform gleaming under the lights. "Ryuko, you look amazing," shouted Mirko from her seat, applauding enthusiastically. "Congratulations, Miss Ryuko," said Nizu with a smile. "I know you didn't win the sports festival, but your second place shows incredible potential and that you can continue to improve." Ryuko nodded, touched by his kind words. Then, All Might stepped forward, his imposing figure radiating confidence and pride. In his hands, he held a golden medal with Ryuko's name engraved on it. "This is a reminder that you are one of the best students in this school, something you should be very proud of," said All Might, his voice resonating with warmth and sincerity. "Both Nizu and I expect great things from you. We know you have a good heart and will do a great job as a hero." Ryuko bowed in a sign of respect, tears forming in her eyes from the kind words she had received. "Thank you, I will treasure your words and strive to be the best hero I can be," she said, her voice trembling but determined. The hall erupted in applause, celebrating Ryuko's achievement and performance. She stepped off the stage with the medal proudly hanging from her neck, while Rumi watched with a radiant smile. She cherished Ryuko and was happy for her friend. "She did so well," exclaimed Kana, turning to Rumi. "Don't you think?" "Absolutely. Ryuko has worked very hard to get here," replied Rumi, nodding with a smile. "I'm sure she'll be an incredible hero." Rumi took a deep breath and looked at the stage. "I hope when they call my name, everything goes well. I want to do it perfectly." "You will, Rumi. We're all very proud of you," said Kana, giving her a comforting hug. Finally, Nizu took the microphone again, his expression showing a mix of excitement and anticipation. "And now, please welcome the heroine Mirko." Rumi, known as Mirko in the world of heroes, began to walk towards the stage with her typical smile that intimidated everyone, though her loved ones knew that smile was one of excitement. Her stride was firm and determined, and the audience applauded enthusiastically as she ascended the stage stairs, her hero uniform highlighting her beautiful yet powerful figure. "Go, Rumi," shouted Lady Nagant from her seat, applauding vigorously. "That's my friend." She continued shouting. "Congratulations, Miss Mirko," said Nizu with a smile. "Your performance in the sports festival was impressive, and you demonstrated all the characteristics of a hero: cunning, great techniques, and unmatched strength. That's why you won in the sports festival. Your first place shows incredible potential and you only have to keep improving." Mirko nodded, moved by his words. Thank you, Director Nizu. This is just the beginning. I promise to keep improving and to protect everyone with my life, she said, her voice firm but filled with emotion. Then, All Might, with confidence and pride, approached holding a golden medal with Mirko's name engraved on it. This will be a reminder that you, Hero Mirko, were the best of all, said All Might. Both Nizu and I know you will perform greatly as a hero. Mirko nodded again, still with her big smile and happy for the kind words she had received. Thank you, I've had fun at U.A and you'll always have my back if you ever need anything from me, she said firmly. Nizu intervened with a smile. We are sure it will be so, Mirko. Your dedication and bravery are an example to all of us. The hall erupted in applause. She stood on the stage with the medal proudly hanging from her neck. Nizu and All Might were about to ask why she hadn't left yet, when the lights began to flicker and loud epic music started playing. What's happening? Whispered Lady Nagant, looking around in surprise. Rumi gave a soft smile, recognizing this as the work of her boyfriend. Hee, silly, you took your time. Suddenly, a green flash appeared from the sky and landed on the stage. When the dust settled, everyone saw a tall young man with a big smile and in a heroic pose. Sorry for the delay, ladies and gentlemen, exclaimed Izuku, waving a hand in greeting. Congratulations to all the graduates, especially the incredible and sexy Mirko. The audience was stunned by the spectacular entrance, then erupted in cheers and applause. Hee, I think I picked up a bit of Star and Stripes' attitude with their epic entrances, thought Izuku with a comical sweat drop on his forehead. His mother, who was in the teacher's booth, dropped her drink. Like any mother, she was glad when her son returned and invited him to see Rumi on this day, but she did not expect her son to make a fool of himself. Hee, apparently my son needs a beating, murmured Inko with a green aura around her, and the teachers near her were scared by the intimidating presence of the number 2 hero. Do one more stupid thing and you'll regret it, Inko thought as she watched her son. But she couldn't help but give a slight smile at seeing Rumi's happy face, as she considered her like a daughter. Izuku, shouted Lady Nagant from her seat, you always have to be the center of attention, don't you? Hee, you know me, gunslinger, Izuku replied happily, as he liked his girlfriend's 2 friends, who were Kana and Ryuko, and he was really impressed with the accuracy with weapons that Kana had. Izuku confidently walked towards Nizu and All Might, and suddenly grabbed the microphone with great speed to surprise the 2 of them. All Might was about to pose for a fight, but Nizu lifted his hand, as he saw how Mirko's smile grew bigger and was tapping her foot on the floor, a clear sign of happiness. The smartest being on earth was amazed because, in all Mirko had at UA he never showed interest in a love relationship. What speed, Shimura, exclaimed Kana. Izuku locked eyes with Mirko and winked at her. All of Mirko's classmates thought she was going to hit him, as many students received her fury for simpler gestures of affection. But to everyone's surprise, Rumi blushed. Is this for real? Murmured some of her classmates from their seats, incredulous at her reaction. Did she blush? Commented one student, surprised that the strongest student at UA was actually blushing over a boy. Okay, that's enough stupidity for today, thought Izuku. He dropped his smile and looked at the cameraman recording everything nationally. Listen up, everyone in Japan, Izuku began as he approached Mirko and took her by the waist. She's mine, and if I find out any of you so much as harm a single strand of her beautiful hair, you'll regret it, Izuku said seriously, his tail swinging violently as he suddenly struck the ground, creating a large crack. And I swear by my ancestors, you'll wish you had never done that. Mirko looked at him in surprise. Izuku, what are you doing? She murmured, though she couldn't help but smile. Protecting you, as always, Izuku replied, softening his expression. After delivering that threat, he relaxed and added, and this beautiful and sexy heroine is mine. Izuku turned his head and kissed her. Everyone present who had their phones recording dropped their devices in shock. What the hell is happening? Everyone thought. That was incredible, shouted Kana, her eyes shining with excitement. Mirko was momentarily shocked, but then she returned the kiss, embracing Izuku tightly. "You're a fool," she murmured against his lips. "But you're my fool." The audience erupted in cheers and applause again, some laughing and others with tears in their eyes at the emotional scene. In Mirko's home, her mother Mary, who was sitting on the couch, watched with a sweet smile. "Hee, that boy really means business. I still remember when he told me he would give everything for my little girl. Now I can be more at ease." Cough, cough, Mary began to cough violently and covered her mouth with her hand. When she checked her hand, it was bloody. "Izuku, I just hope you'll always be there for her when I'm not," Mary thought sadly, then she continued watching television with a smile on her face, seeing her daughter's smile. Right next to Mary was a sheet of paper that read, "Terminal stage lung cancer." Returning to UA, we can see Rumi with a blush on her cheeks and a big smile reflecting how happy she was. Then she snatched the microphone from Izuku and fiercely looked at everyone in the audience. "Listen up, bitches. He's mine, and any little girl who tries to take him from me will only get the pain I'll give her." To emphasize her point, she stomped, damaging a large part of the stage floor and making the entire hall tremble. Instinctively, all the women swallowed nervously at the clear threat. "Wow, Rumi, I didn't know you could be so possessive," Lady Nagant commented with a laugh. "And here I was thinking of asking him out," said a classmate from Rumi's same class with a nervous smile, stepping back a bit. Izuku, still smiling, looked at his partner. "Hee, always so direct, my beautiful heroine." "Did you expect anything less?" replied Rumi, playfully narrowing her eyes. "Well, with nothing more to say, I'll take my man to pamper me on my special day," Rumi said as she grabbed his arm and walked away with Izuku. All Might pretended to cough and checked his teacher's manual to see what to do in this situation. "Aha! Here it is," All Might said joyfully, drawing everyone's attention. "This event has concluded. Plus Ultra," shouted the symbol of peace as he struck a heroic pose. Everyone fell silent. Nagant couldn't help but burst out laughing. "Really, All Might? Was that your big finale?" Ryuko looked around, clearly uncomfortable with the number one hero's situation. "Well, that was interesting." Inko, feeling embarrassed for All Might and seeing that no one was paying attention to the hero, used her telekinesis to stop the live recording. "Sorry about that, All Might," Inko said with a nervous smile. "I think there's been enough spectacle for today." Kana approached Inko and patted her on the back. "Well, at least it was a memorable event. Your telekinetic abilities are as impressive as ever, Inko." Inko sighed and nodded. "Thank you, but sometimes I wish things were a bit more normal." Meanwhile, Izuku and Rumi walked away from the stage, and she couldn't stop smiling. "Izuku, thank you for making this day so special," she said, squeezing his arm tenderly. "I'll do everything I can to make every day special for you, Rumi," Izuku replied with a warm smile. "I promise." After a few minutes, Rumi happily led her boyfriend to a specific place. "Love, are you going to tell me where you're taking me?" Izuku asked, curious about what his girlfriend was up to. She turned to him and smiled. "You've been making excuses since you arrived to see your progress, but today you promised to pay attention to everything." Izuku nodded. "And what do you want?" he asked. Rumi smiled even more enthusiastically and replied, "I want to challenge you, honey." A couple of minutes later, they were in a large hall, a special site at Udata reinforced with titanium for top hero level combat. After a few minutes, the two were facing each other, both with determined smiles. "We're going to warm up a bit," said Rumi as she took her fighting stance. "I hope you haven't gotten too strong for me," Izuku joked as he assumed a defensive posture. "Always confident," replied Rumi, her smile widening. And so the fight began. Both moved with the grace and precision of experienced fighters. Inko, All Might, and Nizu watched from an adjacent control room, with windows allowing them to see every move. All Might and Nizu were particularly interested, as while they knew Rumi's strength well, they were less familiar with Izuku's abilities, having only met him minutes earlier. Rumi launched the first attack, a quick straight kick with her right leg, using a Muay Thai technique known as a teep or front kick. Izuku blocked it with his forearm, deflecting the kick to the side. "Nice block," Rumi commented with a smile. "Thanks, but I'm just getting warmed up," Izuku responded. Izuku countered with a series of rapid punches. Rumi dodged with swift movements, responding with a leg sweep that Izuku evaded with a nimble jump. Rumi attacked again, delivering a strong punch that Izuku received with his palm and was pushed back for meters. "Impressive," remarked Nizu, his eyes shining with interest. "We knew Rumi was exceptional, but it seems this young man is no slouch either." All Might nodded, watching as the green-haired youth fluidly switched between fighting styles. "Yes, his adaptability is remarkable." Inko smiled, confident in her son's abilities. "They're just getting started." This comment surprised both Nizu and All Might. Rumi ceased warming up and increased her speed and strength, launching herself at Izuku with a flurry of punches and kicks. She utilized modified taekwondo techniques, with spinning kicks and high jumps. Izuku blocked and dodged, using a variation of Aikido to redirect the energy of Rumi's attacks and counter with force. "Wow, that looks like Aikido, but with a twist," exclaimed Nizu, impressed. Of course, they both use modified styles to create their own fighting style to perform at their highest potential, said Inko proudly of both. Not to be outdone, Izuku began employing jiu-jitsu techniques, seeking to grab and subdue Rumi. She countered with locks and counterlocks, showcasing her knowledge of judo. Both battled for control, moving in a constant flow of attack and defense. Rumi threw a high spinning kick that Izuku blocked with both forearms, then pivoted on her supporting foot and delivered a low kick towards Izuku's legs. Izuku jumped back, avoiding the blow, and responded with a side kick to Rumi's ribs, but she skillfully dodged it. Izuku advanced quickly, throwing a straight punch that Rumi deflected with a circular block. Seizing the moment, Rumi surged forward with a series of rapid punches, using her superior speed to keep Izuku on the defensive. "Is that all you've got, Izuku?" Rumi taunted. Far from it, Izuku replied, with a challenging smile. Izuku strategically retreated, keeping his stance low and movements compact. Suddenly, he lunged forward with a jump, executing a flying kick that Rumi narrowly dodged, feeling the wind of the strike pass by her face. "Nice kick, dear," praised Rumi, wiping a drop of sweat from her forehead. "You're not bad yourself," Izuku said, adjusting his posture. Both stared intensely at each other, knowing they were just getting started. The real battle had barely begun, and both were eager to demonstrate their strength and skills to each other. Rumi disappeared in a white blur and positioned herself above Izuku. Technique 3, Lunar Step. Mirko, with her foot raised, then brought it down at great speed. Technique 5, Lunar Pressure. A thunderous boom echoed, and a curtain of dust rose, obscuring the view. "The young man will be fine," murmured All Might, worried that his student might have overdone it. Inko chuckled softly, catching their attention. "Didn't I tell you? This is just the beginning." Inko raised her hand and waved to dissipate the smoke, revealing a scene that surprised the number one hero in Nizu. Izuku remained unmoved with Rumi's foot on his shoulder, but they knew Mirko's technique was devastating. The ground was torn apart with several cracks from the impact. Rumi was surprised, though she hadn't used all her strength, knowing that attack was powerful. Her eyes gleamed fiercely. "Today, dear, I'll make you take me seriously and show me your full power." Rumi then leaped back to create distance. With dizzying speed, she began using her special technique, Rabbit Rampage. All her attributes amplified, her movements became almost a blur, launching a series of rapid and devastating attacks. Izuku started to get serious, increasing his speed and strength. His movements became equally swift and precise. Both fighters met in the center of the room, their blows colliding with tremendous force, causing bursts of air. Rumi unleashed a flurry of quick kicks, and Izuku blocked and dodged, responding with direct punches and grappling techniques, trying to subdue Rumi. Taking advantage of a moment of distraction, Izuku caught Rumi in an arm lock. Rumi retaliated with a backward punch that Izuku took straight to the face. Izuku released her and spun backwards several times. When he stopped, he wiped a bit of blood from his nose. "Heh, dear, I think you were brutal with that one." Rumi winked and replied, "But that's how you love me, right?" Izuku chuckled lightly and took on a different fighting stance. Without further delay, Rumi launched herself back into the fight. The battle continued for 3 hours, both fighters giving their all. Finally, in a moment of pure skill and strategy, they found themselves at a standstill and paused for a moment. "Heh, looks like I'm still not at your level," Rumi said. Instead of being upset or frustrated, she was excited. "Even if you're not at my level, you've made astonishing progress," Izuku told her, genuinely impressed by her improvement. "Now I'll bet everything." "It's win or lose," Mirko said, determined to win. She assumed a position Izuku recognized, the animal stance or quadrupedal stance, as if she were an animal. Technique 8, Beast Mode. Mirko roared, and steam began to emanate from her entire body. Izuku gave a serious look, concerned about this technique Rumi had developed. He was about to speak when, in less than 0.1 seconds, Rumi's fist crashed into his face, sending him flying. Izuku regained his composure mid-air, but Mirko was already behind him, delivering a kick to his back, sending him flying to the other side. This continued for a full minute, tossing him back and forth. "Enough!" Izuku shouted and caught Mirko's next kick. "Focus, Rumi, you're losing control." "Grr," Rumi growled. She twisted her body and kicked him in the face with her other foot, but he didn't budge. "Stop using that technique, dear." "Grr," Rumi continued to growl. Izuku forcefully pulled her towards him and embraced her. "I'm sorry, love, I feel like I pushed you to this," Izuku said with a sad voice. Gradually, Rumi began to calm down and felt something wet on her shoulder. When she turned her head, she saw Izuku's sorrowful face and tears streaming from his eyes, feeling guilty for worrying him. "I'm sorry," Mirko whispered. "I thought if I used this technique, I could make you fight seriously." Izuku shook his head. "You're already strong, dear. Besides, if you become as strong as me, then who will protect you?" he joked. "Baka," Rumi said. Then, she kissed Izuku, pulled back, and took a stance, putting some distance between them. "I still have strength left, let's continue, dear, this time I'll win." Izuku sighed, nodded, and also assumed a fighting stance. Rumi took a deep breath. Lunar strength, lunar step, rabbit rampage. As she said that, her muscles surged, and then she disappeared from everyone's sight. Within a second, the sound of her movement was heard. All Might, witnessing this, was astonished. "She broke the sound barrier," he murmured. Nizu nodded, sharing the surprise at such a feat. "It's an incredible ability, her speed is extraordinary." Izuku remained calm, his eyes scanning from side to side. Then he crouched down, and a flash passed by. He moved to the right, and a large crater appeared in the ground. Technique 4, Lunar Palm, was heard behind him. Izuku turned around and realized it was a mistake to turn his back, as she wasn't there. Then his instincts warned him of danger. He tried to move, but it was too late. He barely managed to turn and cover himself with his arms. Boom, Izuku was sent flying, and to everyone's surprise, the titanium walls were pierced as if they were paper. "Fool, I finally got you," Rumi said, quite exhausted. She started to see blurry and staggered, almost fainting. All Might tried to go help her, but his body didn't move. He turned his head towards the heroine. "Why are you stopping me, Inko?" All Might asked, perplexed. "She doesn't need your help," Inko replied, watching from the control room. Mirko was about to crash to the ground, but to All Might and Nizu's surprise, they saw Izuku appear out of nowhere and gently catch her. He was covered in cuts, blood seeping through, and there were bruises on his body from the impact of Mirko's technique. "Sleep, my queen, you've earned it," Izuku said tenderly. Then he kissed her forehead, lifted her bridal style, and left the room. All Might and Nizu watched in silence, amazed by the scene. Finally, Nizu broke the silence. "It seems the next generation of heroes is in good hands." All Might nodded, his eyes still fixed on the door through which Izuku had exited. "Yes, they have the potential to achieve great things together." Inko smiled from the control room, proud of her son and Rumi. Strength lies not only in physical power but also in the heart. And they both have plenty of that. As Izuku walked away from the room, he gently stroked Rumi's hair, feeling the weight of the battle on his own body. But more than the pain, he felt a deep admiration and love for the woman in his arms. "You're amazing, Rumi," he whispered as he walked through the halls of UA. Rumi, though exhausted, smiled weakly, recognizing Izuku's voice. Even in her semi-conscious state she could hear her boyfriend's words of affection. Izuku walked through the halls of UA, his imposing stature and dominant aura causing students to step aside. They whispered among themselves, amazed that UA's strongest, Rumi, had been pushed to her limits, to the point of fainting, as the fight had been recorded and was going viral quickly. Izuku kept his gaze forward, his mind focused on getting Mirko to the infirmary as soon as possible. "Did you see that? He really fought at Mirko's level," whispered a student, while another nodded with wide eyes. "I can't believe it. I thought she was unmatched," added another voice in the hallway. As he progressed, the rumors continued. Finally, he encountered his mother, Inko, who approached and tenderly stroked Mirko's hair. "She's grown so much, hasn't she?" said Inko, smiling gently. "Yes, her progress is impressive," Izuku replied, smiling. "But she still has much to learn." Inko nodded, looking at her son with pride. "You've been a great influence on her, Izuku. I'm sure she'll continue to improve with your support. And I learn from her too," Izuku responded as they continued walking towards the infirmary. "She still has a ways to go to reach her limit, and I'll make sure she reaches her full potential." They arrived at the infirmary, and Recovery Girl, upon seeing them, hurried over. "Oh my, what happened to this girl?" "Young man, put her on the bed." Izuku carefully placed her on the bed. "Just intense practice. Nothing serious, but she needs rest." Recovery Girl clicked her tongue. "You always push yourself too hard, Rumi. And you, young man, need medical attention too. Don't worry about me, I'll be fine. I just need to make sure Rumi recovers," Izuku said, still looking at his girlfriend. Inko decided to head home, giving her son a kiss on the cheek. "Take care of her, Izuku. I'm proud of you." Izuku nodded gratefully. "Thank you, Mom. See you soon." As Inko left, Izuku stayed by Rumi's bedside, holding her hand. Recovery Girl began her healing on Rumi, who slowly started to wake up. "Hey," whispered Izuku, seeing her open her eyes. "Izuku?" Rumi blinked, recognizing her surroundings. "What happened? You fainted after that incredible fight," Izuku replied with a smile. "You're in the infirmary. Recovery Girl is taking care of you." Rumi sighed, feeling very tired but relieved. "I think I overdid it a bit." Izuku chuckled. "Yeah, a little," he joked. "But it was an impressive fight. I'm proud of you, Rumi." Rumi smiled, feeling stronger with Izuku's words. "Thank you, Izuku. Hihi, I still can't believe I beat you." Izuku gently squeezed her hand. "I've always told you, and I'll say it again, you, Rumi Usajiyama, are the most amazing woman I've ever met, and I'm happy to be with you." Despite her fatigue, Rumi raised her hand and caressed her boyfriend's face. "And you, Izuku Shimura, are the guy I love the most, and I'm happy to be with you." They both chuckled affectionately, and Izuku kissed her forehead. Sleep, dear, you're not fully recovered yet. Okay, dear, Rumi said, drifting back to sleep. 30 minutes later, Mary arrived, visibly worried but relieved to see her daughter resting in bed and smiling. Rumi's satisfied smile reassured her, and she had an idea why she was smiling. Upon entering, she greeted Izuku and sat beside him, starting a conversation about the fight and Rumi's impressive progress. It was an incredible fight, Izuku, Mary commented. I've never seen Rumi fight with such determination. Yes, she's worked very hard, Izuku replied, nodding. But she's also pushed herself too much. Mary sighed, looking at her daughter. She's always been like that, always wanting to be the best and surpass her limits. Izuku fell silent for a moment, his expression becoming more serious. Mary, there's something I need to talk to you about. Mary looked at him, a mix of curiosity and concern in her eyes. What is it, Izuku? When were you planning to tell Rumi about your illness? Izuku asked bluntly. Mary froze, her eyes filling with tears. How? How do you know? She stuttered, caught off guard. I can smell it, Izuku replied, touching his nose. I can smell something off about you. It smells like death. Mary began to cry and couldn't help but hug Izuku tightly, feeling scared. I don't want to die, Izuku. But I have no hope left. It's too late, and there's no cure, and I don't want to leave my little girl alone. Mary sobbed, her tears falling onto Izuku's shoulder. It's so unfair. I don't want to leave Rumi alone, she's still my baby, and I know she still needs me. Izuku held her, his arms offering comfort. It's okay, Mary. No matter what happens, I promise I'll protect your legacy. I'll protect Rumi, and if the worst happens, I know a part of you will live on in her. Mary hugged Izuku tighter, and he simply held her, letting her release her sadness. Her tears flowed uncontrollably, and the weight of her illness and her love for her daughter felt heavier than ever. After a while, Mary calmed down a bit, feeling somewhat relieved to share her burden with Izuku. Thank you, Izuku, whispered Mary, wiping her tears. I knew I could trust you. You're the perfect person to take care of Rumi. Izuku smiled at her tenderly. I'll always be here for you both. Just as much as I love Rumi, I care deeply for you too. Mary nodded, feeling somewhat calmer. She knew that, though her time was limited, her daughter would be in good hands. Thank you, little Izu, Mary said in a whisper. Don't worry, she won't be alone, Izuku said determinedly. I'll be here for her. I promise I'll do everything I can to keep Rumi safe and happy. Mary pulled back slightly, looking into his eyes. Thank you, Izuku. You have no idea how much that means to me. Izuku nodded, his gaze full of resolve. I'll do whatever it takes. Rumi will never be alone as long as I'm here. They sat in silence for a moment. Mary took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. You know, Mary said, breaking the silence, Rumi has always been a competitive girl. Since she was little, she's always wanted to be the best and has worked so hard for it. But sometimes I worry she pushes herself too much. Izuku nodded. I know. That's why I have to be here for her, to make sure she doesn't push herself too far and hurt herself in the process. Mary looked at him gratefully. You're a good man, Izuku. I'm so grateful you're in her life. Izuku smiled, though he remained concerned about how his girlfriend would take this news. I'll do everything I can to support her. And I'll be here for you too, Mary. You're not alone in this, and I care for you like you're my second mother. Mary took Izuku's hand, squeezing it affectionately. Thank you, Izuku. You're like a son to me too. Knowing you'll be with my daughter gives me peace of mind. They sat in silence for a few more minutes before Mary spoke again. I know it'll be tough for her and for you, but together I know you can handle whatever challenges the world throws at you. Izuku sighed, his eyes reflecting sadness, but he had to stay strong. It's hard, but I have to be strong for her. I can't let my worry affect her more than it will when she knows the truth. Mary nodded, understanding his feelings. You're stronger than you think, Izuku. Rumi is lucky to have you by her side. Izuku smiled slightly, grateful for Mary's words. Thank you. I only want the best for her. And I'm also fortunate to be with her and with you, both of you are my family. As they continued talking, time seemed to pass quickly. Finally, Mary stood up, getting ready to leave. Take care, Mary, Izuku said affectionately. If you need anything, please don't hesitate to tell me. Mary nodded, a thankful smile on her face. I will, Izuku. Thank you for everything. They said goodbye with a hug, and Mary left, kissing Izuku on the forehead and another on her daughter's. Izuku sat beside Rumi, holding her hand tenderly. He watched Mary walk away and, once she was out of the room, turned to his girlfriend with sadness in his eyes. Rumi, you heard everything, didn't you? He asked, his voice soft but concerned. Seconds later, Rumi's sobs could be heard, her emotional resistance finally breaking. It's not fair, Izuku. It's not fair that my mother is going to die, she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. She couldn't hold back her crying any longer and started weeping. Izuku pulled her close, holding her tightly. I know, love. It's incredibly unfair. But we're here for her, and we'll do everything we can to make the time she has left happy and worry-free. And if possible, we'll find a cure. Because Mom has to leave, Rumi said between tears. She wanted to keep seeing me, she wanted to see how her efforts made me the great hero I am, and be proud of me. But if she goes away then nothing will make sense, Rumi said as she cried in Izuku's arms. Meanwhile, Mary was outside the infirmary, feeling a pain in her chest as she listened to her devastated daughter. She knew her daughter had woken up and trusted that Izuku would provide the calm and support she needed. Mary knew that if she entered herself, she would break down in tears, which would only worry her daughter more. She heard Izuku trying to console Rumi and bit her lip, holding back the urge to rush in and comfort her daughter. I'm sorry, my baby, but I'm not that strong, Mary thought as she headed towards the hospital exit. Inside the infirmary, Izuku continued to hold Rumi, letting her release her emotions. Rumi, your mother loves you and is proud of you. No matter how much time she has left, she'll always be a part of your life and mine. And every success you achieve as a hero will be a tribute to her, a tribute to the great mother of Rumi Usajiyama. Rumi nodded, though her tears didn't stop. I know, Izuku. It's just that. I need her so much. I don't know how I'm going to go on without her. Izuku gently stroked her, trying to convey all his love. You won't be alone, Rumi. I'm here with you. And your mother will always be in your heart, guiding and supporting you every step of the way. Rumi took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. Thank you, Izuku. I don't know what I would do without you. I'll always be here for you, Izuku promised, firmness and love in his voice. We'll get through this together. The room filled with a comforting silence as Rumi found solace in Izuku's embrace. Mary left the hospital knowing she had to tell the truth, so she headed to her friend Inko's house. She walked slowly, her thoughts in turmoil. Upon arrival, she was warmly greeted by a joyful Inko. But Inko immediately noticed the sadness in Mary's eyes. Mary, what's wrong? Asked Inko, concerned. Mary, with a trembling voice, told Inko everything, detailing her illness and that she had only a couple of years left to live at most. The news left Inko in shock, and both women began to cry together. Mary, why didn't you tell me? Inko said, sobbing. Inko, I'm so sorry, Mary sobbed. I never told anyone because I didn't want to worry anyone, and I was so focused on taking care of Rumi. When I started noticing the symptoms, I didn't pay attention. And now, it's too late. Tears in her eyes, Inko hugged her friend. You foolish girl, you should have told me. We could have done something sooner. This is. I can't believe it. Mary nodded sadly. I know, Inko. But now I just want to make sure Rumi is okay when I'm gone. So, could you take care of her when I'm not around? Inko looked at her with anger and tears in her eyes. You know Rumi is like a daughter to me. She's always been part of our family. You don't need to ask me to take care of her, because I always will. Still in each other's arms, Mary spoke affectionately. Hihi, you really are a beacon of light in my life. Thank you for everything, my dear sister. Inko smiled through her tears. You were a light in my life too. When I lost my partner and was lost not knowing what to do, you were the one who comforted me and encouraged me not to give up. The two friends hugged each other tighter, sharing their pain. Then Inko invited Mary to stay permanently at her house, as she now needed to take care of her health and not overexert herself. After Mary brought some belongings over, Inko decided she couldn't sit idly by. She prepared some food for her friend and bid her farewell with a hug, promising to return soon. Then she flew off at great speed across the city, desperately searching for doctors or someone with a quirk who could cure her friend. Hours passed, and despite her tireless efforts, she couldn't find any solution. With anger and frustration, Inko flew towards the ocean, finding a deserted island. She activated her quirk to its maximum capacity, causing the island to levitate, then clenched her fist tightly, shattering it in an explosion that mirrored her power and anguish. Why? She screamed at the sky, releasing all her anger and desperation for not finding a cure for her friend, who was more like a sister to her. Swirls of water and small storms emerged. I won't lose anyone else. I've already lost too many precious people. Inko fell to her knees on what remained of the island, breathing heavily, tears streaming down her cheeks. I won't lose anyone else, she murmured through sobs, with a fierce determination growing in her heart. I will find a way. I swear. After calming herself down, Inko returned home, finding Mary asleep in bed. She approached quietly, covering her with a blanket and then sat by her side. Rest, my dear friend, she whispered while stroking her head, noticing her friend was breathing with some difficulty. I'm such a fool, how did I not realize sooner, she thought with regret. The next day, in the UA infirmary, Izuku sat beside Rumi's bed, watching over her as she slept. His mind was full of thoughts, but one thing was clear, he would do everything possible to protect Rumi and honor the promise he made to Mary. Finally, after 10 minutes, Rumi began to stir slightly, showing signs of waking up. Izuku leaned forward, gently taking her hand. Rumi, how are you feeling? He asked, his voice full of concern and affection. Rumi slowly opened her eyes, focusing on Izuku's face. I'm a bit tired. But okay. What happened? Izuku smiled, though it was more of a sad smile. Yesterday you pushed yourself hard in the fight and needed to rest, and then hearing about your mom completely exhausted you, so you fell asleep in my arms. Rumi nodded, vaguely recalling the final moments of the battle. Yes, I wanted to give it my all. But it seems I still have a long way to go to beat you. You've made incredible progress, Izuku reassured her. I'm so proud of you. Rumi returned a small smile, though weariness and sadness were evident in her eyes. Thank you, Izuku. I couldn't have done it without your support. Izuku gently squeezed her hand. I'll always be here for you, Rumi. You don't have to face this alone. Rumi sighed, her expression softening. I know. And that means a lot to me. They sat in silence for a moment, enjoying each other's company. Finally, Rumi spoke again. My mom, do you know how she's doing right now? She asked, looking around to see if she could find her mother. My mother called me, saying she's resting at our house, Izuku replied. But she's okay. We talked for a bit, and she told me she's resting and not to worry. Rumi nodded, though worry still lingered in her eyes. I want to see her soon. We will, Izuku said firmly. But first, rest a bit more. You need to regain your strength. Rumi lay down, trying to sleep, but couldn't. Darling, my mother will get better, right? She asked in a low voice, fearing the answer. I don't know, Izuku said seriously. I don't want to give you false hope, but I'll do everything I can to find a way to save her. Rumi closed her eyes, trying to keep herself composed. Thank you, but this is all so hard. I always thought she'd be with me, Rumi spoke with a broken voice. Izuku gently embraced her and stroked her, trying to comfort her. I know, love. But you don't have to face this alone. Remember, you don't have to be strong in front of me. Rumi held on to Izuku, allowing herself moments of vulnerability. Thank you, darling, she whispered as tears began to roll down her cheeks. Izuku continued to tenderly stroke her back. It's okay to cry, no one will judge you, love. Finally, with those last words, Rumi could no longer bear it and burst into tears, letting out all the sadness and fear she had been holding back. Izuku held her tightly, letting her release it all. I'm here with you, Rumi, he whispered. You're not alone, and together we'll find a way to get through this. Rumi clung to him tighter, her tears soaking Izuku's shirt. I don't want to lose my mother, she sobbed. She means everything to me. Izuku hugged her even tighter, feeling her pain. I know, love. I know. And I won't stop fighting until the last moment to find a solution. But no matter what happens, I'll be by your side. Gradually, Rumi's sobs began to diminish, and her breathing became calmer. Izuku continued to comfort her, whispering words of support and love until she finally fell asleep, emotionally exhausted. Izuku stroked Rumi's head and, after a few minutes, laid her down comfortably in bed and kissed her forehead. Rest, dear. Then, he went to the window and opened it. He observed the streets, his eyes hardening with a fierceness promising pain. His body began to grow, taking on the form of Tailong. In a split second, he disappeared, and a white blur was seen moving swiftly across the city. A few seconds later, he landed on a building and looked around suspiciously. He closed his eyes and sharpened his ears. He began to hear people's footsteps, vehicles passing, dogs barking, and the flapping of birds' wings, until he heard it, someone hiding. Without wasting time, he moved swiftly, stretched out his hand, and grasped them firmly. Answer me. Who or what are you and why do you always spy on me? He spoke harshly. His hand began to move until it stopped, and Izuku threw something, and the groan of someone was heard. A click was heard and someone materialized. You're an idiot, you almost killed me, shouted the one who, in Izuku's sight, was a soldier in strange armor. Tell me who you are, or I will consider you a danger to my family. The subject remained silent for a while and then sighed. I really don't get paid enough. The guy took off his helmet, revealing white hair and green eyes. Impossible, exclaimed Izuku. Who the hell are you and why does your scent resemble mine and my mother's? The white-haired man was somewhat nervous and scratched his cheek, not knowing what to answer. Heh, I'm your great-grandson, nice to meet you. Izuku stopped playing around and became serious. With a swing of his hand, he made a cut in the air that seconds later left a slight cut on the boy's cheek. Young man, I'll give you 5 seconds to explain everything. Izuku spoke seriously. The boy, somewhat scared, began to tell everything. An hour passed, and Izuku had a great headache from everything he had learned. Okay, you're telling me this isn't your world, that you're my descendant from another reality, and you're in a futuristic organization who believe themselves to be time police, and to top it off, the leader of that organization turns out to be my daughter from another world. Izuku sighed and asked. That's all, right? Yes sir, replied the guy in a military pose. Izuku sighed again, rubbing his temples from everything he had heard. This is too much. But tell me, why are you here spying on me then? His great-grandson sighed. I was assigned to watch over you and make sure you don't interfere with the timeline of this reality. There are critical events that must happen here, and if you stray from your path, it could alter the future of this reality. Izuku frowned. Critical events? Like what? I can't give you exact details, but it's all related to your growth as a hero and your relationship with certain individuals. Izuku exhaled with frustration. And if I don't follow your plan, what happens? A temporal chaos could be unleashed that could destroy everything you know, or, rather, if things don't go well, you will suffer the consequences. Terrible things will happen to you. So it's vital that everything follows its natural course. The young man added, I was also tasked with investigating the anomaly that is present in your world. Izuku sighed. If it weren't for the fact that you clearly have traits of mine and technology from another world, I would declare you insane. So, what anomaly is there in this world that you're here for? The boy pointed it at him and then touched a bracelet. A hologram appeared, showing an Izuku Shimura, but clearly weaker and smaller. To the opinion of Izuku from this world, it was embarrassing. This is Izuku, it's your standard version that exists in almost every universe, but sometimes there are anomalies or variations of him. The subject touched the bracelet and countless different Izukus with different traits were seen, and some clearly weren't a good version of him. Usually, the variations differ from canon or a specific point in the story, and that in itself is a risk factor. We wouldn't usually be here, but it turns out there are 5 versions of you with the same origin, but... The guy stopped, deciding whether to continue or not. Go on and don't hold back, ordered Izuku. The young man sighed and continued speaking. In one world, people feared your power and slaughtered your loved ones, and you went crazy, and in the end, you died too. In another timeline, you faced AFO before finishing your training and failed. In another, your girlfriend Rumi died of cancer and your loss affected you, and to vent, you slaughtered all the villains, but the world didn't tolerate that behavior, so you died too. In the last world I visited, I directly involved myself with that version of yours, and that Izuku became paranoid because of the information I gave him, which inevitably drove away his loved ones. The turning point was when Rumi left you for another, and, well, you didn't take it well and ended your life. For the first time in his life, Tailong's hands trembled, not knowing how to accept that fact. He calmed his pounding heart and took a deep breath. I understand, I appreciate you being honest with me, but you can retire from your mission now. The young white-haired man plucked a hair and handed it to him. Izuku was confused by this action, so he asked, why are you giving me your hair? The familiar Izuku from another reality gave a slight smile. It will serve you, and instinctively, you will know how to use it. The guy extended his hand, and a portal appeared. Before entering, he turned and said, my quirk is healing frost. After that, he disappeared, leaving Izuku staring into space, not knowing what to do. Izuku looked at the hair in his hand, a simple white lock that honestly didn't seem like much. Healing frost, he murmured. Then he looked at the sky, making a decision. No matter what happens, no matter what my fate is, I will protect Rumi and my family. Izuku returned to the infirmary, carefully storing the hair. He sat next to Rumi, who was still sleeping soundly. He stroked her forehead and leaned in to whisper, rest, my love. I promise I will do everything I can to save your mother. After another day of rest, they went to Rumi's house to pick up some clothes to move to the Shimura house, as her mother and Mary had agreed to live together. Living together seemed to be a practical and emotionally comforting solution for everyone. The week passed, and Izuku was somewhat upset by a situation he hadn't anticipated. Now he was in a UA uniform and beside him was his girlfriend in her heroine costume. Haha, darling, why the sour face? Rumi asked with a playful smile. Izuku sighed deeply. I thought, with my strength, the principal would let me become a hero without going through all these formalities. Rumi looked at him in surprise before bursting into laughter. Seriously, Izuku, you're incredibly strong, but also incredibly naive sometimes. Izuku frowned, but couldn't help but smile. I don't understand why it's necessary. I've already demonstrated my abilities. Yeah, but rules are rules, Rumi replied, giving him a gentle tap on the shoulder. Besides, this will allow you to connect with other aspiring heroes and learn things brute strength alone can't teach you. Izuku nodded, still somewhat reluctant. I guess you're right. I just hope it's not a waste of time. Rumi smiled and kissed him on the cheek. Trust me, darling, it'll be an experience you'll fondly remember. And who knows, maybe you'll be as cool as me, there's a giant portrait of me in honor. Rumi said, puffing her chest with pride. That's awesome. I'd like to see it when we enter UA. After a while, they arrived at UA. As they walked through the halls, students stepped aside, impressed by Izuku and Rumi's imposing presence. Many whispered among themselves, surprised that UA's strongest, Rumi, was standing next to someone who had just appeared but showed unimaginable power. Did you see that? That's Izuku Shimura. They say he defeated Mirko, whispered one student. That's incredible. I never thought anyone could do that, replied another. Rumi winked at Izuku. See, you're already famous here. You just have to get used to it. Izuku smiled, feeling more relaxed. I guess it's something I'll have to get used to. The couple continued walking through the halls, leaving behind the whispers and curious looks of the students. Mirko, with great enthusiasm, led Izuku to the portrait in his honor. Tada! Mirko exclaimed happily as she opened a door to a room and exaggeratedly extended her hands, pointing to his portrait. Izuku looked at the painting with a mix of surprise and amusement. Haha, darling, is that real or mounted? He said, pointing to what appeared to be Mirko on top of several beaten bodies of her classmates. In one corner, Ryuko had a red face of embarrassment as she covered herself with her hand to avoid being recognized in the photo. Mirko tilted her head, confused. Yes, darling, that's me. Don't you recognize your sexy, cute, and loving girlfriend? Izuku scratched his neck, trying to disguise his nervousness. Now I feel sorry for your classmates, he thought. Hee, you really look stunning in your photo, he responded, somewhat nervously, as his partner's smile in the picture contrasted with the horrified faces of her classmates. Mirko burst into laughter. Thanks, honey. You know I had to leave my mark on UA in some way. Izuku couldn't help but laugh too. Well, you definitely did that. I'm sure no one will forget that image. Mirko smiled widely and kissed him on the cheek. Come on, there's more I want to show you. As they walked down the halls, Izuku couldn't help but think about how Mirko always found a way to stand out. Though her method was unorthodox, there was something about her indomitable spirit that inspired and filled him with admiration. You know, Mirko, you always surprise me, Izuku said as they walked. Oh really? In what way? She asked, curious. In every way. Your energy, your bravery, your unique style, Izuku replied, smiling. Mirko stopped and looked at him intently, her eyes shining with affection. And you, Izuku, make me feel like somehow my life feels complete with you by my side. Izuku felt warmth in his chest hearing those words. You too, Rumi. Who knows what I would be without you in my life. Mirko hugged him tightly, resting her head on Izuku's chest. No matter what challenges we face, I know together we can overcome anything. Izuku hugged her back, feeling the same determination and love. I love you, Izuku said, and Rumi just had a big smile while she still rested on her lover's chest. After a moment of quiet, they separated and continued their tour of UA. Later on, they encountered Director Nizu in the hallway. The small but wise director greeted them with his characteristic smile. Welcome, Izuku Shimura and Rumi Usajiyama. I hope young Shimura is ready for what awaits him. Izuku bowed respectfully. Thank you, Director Nizu. I'll do my best. Nizu nodded, then became serious. Izuku, I know your strength is impressive, but UA is more than just power. Here, you will learn to be a true hero in every sense. Rumi, I'm glad to see you're supporting Izuku. Rumi smiled. Always, Director. Izuku and I are an unstoppable team. Perfect, Nizu replied. Now, Izuku, prepare yourself for your first day of classes. It will be an experience you'll never forget. Izuku looked at Rumi, who gave him a final kiss on the cheek before parting ways to begin her patrol as a hero. Good luck, darling. See you later. Izuku nodded. Bye, Rumi. See you later. With that, Izuku headed to his classroom, ready to face the challenges that awaited him at UA. Izuku had already spent a week at UA as a student, and although the time had been short, he had already noticed 3 students who caught his attention: Nijire Hado, Mirio Togata, and Tamaki Yamachiki. Despite being only first years, Izuku saw great potential in them. However, due to his intimidating appearance, no one approached him, and he also made no effort to socialize. The day had ended, and the hallways filled with students heading home or to extracurricular activities. Izuku walked alone, his mind filled with thoughts about his past, present, and the mysterious words of the time traveler he had met. He knew he had to share this burden with his family. Upon arriving home, he found Inko preparing dinner, while Mary and Rumi were talking in the living room. With a deep sigh, Izuku decided it was the right time. Mom, Mary, Rumi. I have something very important to tell you, he said, capturing the attention of the 3 women. What's wrong, dear? Asked Inko, setting aside the frying pan and wiping her hands on her apron. Yeah, Izuku, what's going on? Added Mary, looking up from her conversation with Rumi. They sat around the table, and with each word, Izuku recounted his encounter with the time traveler and the grim fates his other selves had faced. Inko turned pale, fear and concern clearly visible on her face. What does this mean for you? Are you in danger? She asked, her voice trembling, her protective instinct surfacing. Mary, though trying to remain calm, couldn't help but express her concern. Izuku, this sounds very serious. You can't carry this burden alone. What can we do to help you? I'm not sure, replied Izuku, looking at each of them. I just know that the things that will come in the future may not be easy to overcome. Rumi, however, couldn't contain her emotions. She got up abruptly and ran towards Izuku, embracing him tightly, tears freely streaming down her face. I won't leave you, Izuku, she began to sob. My other self was foolish to leave you and go with someone else. I promise that even if you go mad or become a villain, I'll be by your side. I'll never abandon you. Izuku was overwhelmed by Rumi's reaction. Thank you, Rumi. That means a lot to me, he said, returning the hug tightly. But I don't want any of you to be in danger because of me. Inko approached, placing a hand on Izuku's shoulder. Izuku, we're your family. No matter what happens, we'll be with you. We'll face it together as a family. Mary nodded, her expression serious. Exactly. We won't let you face this alone. Thank you, all of you, he whispered, smiling. Thank you for being by my side. I still don't know what the future holds for me, but knowing I have your support means a lot to me. After that day, Izuku continued attending UA. His days were filled with training and studying. Although he kept his distance, he couldn't help but repeatedly cross paths with Nijire, Mirio, and Tamaki. Each encounter increased his curiosity, and he saw potential in all 3 of them. One day, he decided to go to the gym to train. Upon arrival, he saw Mirio trying to lift something heavy, Tamaki in a corner with a lost look, and Nijire jumping around aimlessly. Frustrated by their lack of focus, he stamped his foot, shaking the place. What do you think you're doing? Izuku shouted at them, forcing the 3 to kneel in front of him, as if they were being scolded children. Being a hero is hard and puts your life at risk. You can't afford to waste time. If you fail, someone could die, understand? Nijire, Mirio, and Tamaki looked at him in surprise and then lowered their gazes in embarrassment, but they nodded, acknowledging the truth in his words. You're right, Izuku, admitted Mirio. We need to improve. Tamaki and Nijire nodded in agreement. Izuku smiled, as they reminded him of his disciples he had trained in the United States. I'm willing to help you, Izuku said, softening his tone. If you accept, I can train you and make you greater than you can imagine. The three students looked at each other and finally nodded. We accept, exclaimed Nijire with her usual enthusiasm. After an intense training session, they decided to celebrate with a toast of soda. Nijire, with her cheerful attitude, approached Izuku and impulsively kissed him on the cheek. Thank you, Izuku, she said, smiling. Oh, crap, thought Izuku, realizing the implications just as the heroine Mirko appeared very angry. Run! Izuku shouted to his new pupils, who quickly scattered. Rumi approached angrily and hit him on the head. How could you let yourself be kissed like that, she scolded, fury in her eyes. Rumi, wait. Izuku tried to say, but Rumi interrupted him. I don't care about the explanation, Izuku. That was inappropriate, she said, her voice trembling with a mix of jealousy and anger. Izuku, trying to calm her, took her by the waist and kissed her passionately. Rumi initially wanted to resist, but Izuku gently caressed her body with his free hand, and eventually, Rumi gave in to her impulses and returned the kiss with even greater passion. When they broke apart, Rumi was panting for air, her face completely red. I'm sorry, Rumi, he said softly. It was nothing, I promise. Rumi pouted and turned her head, still somewhat angry. I'll forgive you this time only, she whispered. His new pupils, who were watching from hiding, saw the scene. Nijire blushed, understanding what she had done and how her gesture had been misinterpreted. I think I should apologize to the heroine Mirko, suggested Nijire, looking at Mirio and Tamaki. Yes, you're right, said Mirio. Tamaki, always shy, nodded. It's the right thing to do. They timidly approached Rumi, who was still near Izuku, and Nijire was the first to speak. I'm very sorry, Rumi. I didn't mean to cause any misunderstanding, she said, lowering her head. Rumi, a bit calmer, sighed. It's okay. Just be more careful next time, alright? Yes, Mirko-senpai, Nijire said, now more relieved. Then Mirko talked to Izuku's students and recommended some exercise routines to them. Izuku smiled, happy to see his pupils and Rumi getting along. Well, now that everything is clear, rest and eat because tomorrow we will train again. We still have a lot of work to do. Yes, the three responded in unison, with renewed determination. 2 years had passed, and now Izuku and his pupils were known as the four strongest in UA. Nijire, Mirio, and Tamaki, under Izuku's tutelage, had become heroes in the making, combining their quirks with martial skills that amazed everyone. Nizu organized a presentation day to motivate the students, especially the new ones. Second-year students and the newly admitted first-years gathered in the gym, eager to see the legendary four strongest in action. In the center of the gym, Izuku waited, with impressive calm, while his three pupils prepared to face him, stretching for the fight. Come on, master, said Mirio with a challenging smile, this time it won't be so easy for you. I hope so, Mirio, Izuku responded, adopting a combat stance. Show me how much you've improved. The confrontation began with Tamaki, who used his quirk, manifestation, to transform his arm into an octopus tentacle, attacking with a series of quick and precise blows. Izuku deftly dodged, blocking some attacks with martial defense movements. It's not enough, Tamaki, said Izuku as he spun around, launching a counterattack. Tamaki barely managed to block the blow, retreating as Nijire entered the fray. With her quirk, wave motion, she launched powerful energy waves at Izuku, who dodged them with a series of jumps and flips. Good, Nijire. But you need to be more precise, Izuku said, launching himself at her with a series of quick, precise kicks. Nijire, demonstrating her martial skill, blocked some of the kicks and countered with a low sweep, trying to unbalance Izuku. However, he jumped at the last moment, avoiding the attack and spinning in the air to land on his feet. Now it's my turn, shouted Mirio, appearing from the ground and entering the fight. Using his quirk, permeation, he moved through the ground and walls, attacking Izuku from all angles. "Wow, Mirio, you're getting more unpredictable," commented Izuku, maintaining his focus. Izuku concentrated, using his experience and reflexes to anticipate Mirio's movements. Every time he appeared, Izuku blocked or deflected his attacks and countered with powerful blows to the face or abdomen. The fight intensified as the three began to coordinate their attacks, using their quirks and martial skills in an impressive display of teamwork and prowess. "Come on, guys, work together," encouraged Izuku. Even though he was under pressure, he enjoyed seeing his pupils' progress. The audience watched in amazement, cheering and applauding each move. Finally, with a quick and precise move, Izuku managed to land a right hook on Tamaki that left him stunned, then knocked down Nijire and stopped a punch from Mirio with just 3 fingers. "Incredible," exclaimed a first-year student, unable to believe what he was seeing. Mirio, seeing this, sighed and relaxed his stance to concede victory to Izuku. "I give up, master," said Mirio with a smile. "You're amazing." "Thank you, Mirio," replied Izuku, smiling back. "But remember, the true victory lies in the effort and determination you put into each training session." The 3 pupils stood up, and the gym erupted in applause and cheers. "We're the strongest thanks to you, master," said Nijire enthusiastically. "Let's keep training hard," added Tamaki, determined. "Yes, let's keep growing together," concluded Mirio, looking at his companions and Izuku with determination. Izuku looked at his pupils with pride, knowing they were ready for any challenge the future might bring. After the demonstration, Izuku decided to leave early. Upon arriving home, he noticed a different atmosphere. Inko and Rumi had sad faces, and on a bed lay Mary, pale and weak, having lost weight and breathing with difficulty. "Mary," murmured Izuku, approaching her. Mary saw him and gave a faint smile. "Hello, Izuku," she said weakly. Izuku, as best he could, smiled back and greeted her. Rumi, unable to contain her emotions, left the room to cry. "What happened, Mom?" asked Izuku, his voice laden with concern. Inko, with tears in her eyes, responded, "The doctor said there's not much they can do. Her illness is progressing, and she only has a few months to live." Izuku clenched his fists, trying to contain his frustration. "It can't be. There has to be something we can do." Mary exchanged a look with Izuku, and he nodded, understanding what she wanted to convey. "I'll be right back," Izuku said, going to find Rumi. He found her in the hallway, sobbing and cursing herself for not being able to find a cure for her mother. "Rumi," he said softly, approaching her and hugging her. "It's not your fault." Rumi clung to Izuku, crying into his chest. "It's so unfair, Izuku. I can't lose her." Izuku held her tightly, gently stroking her hair. "We won't lose her. We'll find a way. Together." Rumi looked into his eyes, feeling desperate and not knowing what to do. Izuku kissed her softly, conveying all the love and tranquility he could. "Calm down, my love. I'm here with you. And I'll do the impossible to see you happy." Rumi, her eyes still full of tears, nodded slowly. "Thank you, Izuku. I don't know what I would do without you." Izuku hugged her tighter, determined to find a solution. "We will get through this. You're not alone in this." Rumi pulled away slightly, looking at him with hope. "Do you think there's something we can do?" "I'm sure we'll find something," replied Izuku with determination. "We'll talk to more doctors, research every possible option. I'll even go abroad, but we won't give up." Rumi took a deep breath and nodded, feeling a bit of comfort. "Yes. You're right. We can't give up." Izuku caressed her cheek, looking at her tenderly. "Together we are strong, Rumi. We'll fight for Mary with everything we have." "I love you, Izuku," said Rumi, with a weak but sincere smile. "I love you too, Rumi," replied Izuku, kissing her again. For the last 2 years, Izuku had not stopped looking for a way to cure Mary. At night, when everyone was asleep, he would sneak out of the house with a hood and a mask, venturing into the red light districts in search of someone who could help him. His desperation led him to the darkest corners of the city, where rumors circulated about traffickers and people with dark knowledge. One night, while walking down a narrow alley, he overheard a conversation between two men talking about a Yakuza leader who was using a girl as a lab rat. Izuku's anger flared upon hearing that, and he decided to follow them to get more information. "Have you heard the latest about Chisaki?" said one of the men. "He's using that girl again. Poor thing, I don't know how much more she can take." "Yeah, it's crazy what he's doing. But no one dares to confront him," replied the other man. Following the two men to a dark alley, Izuku cornered them, his murderous intent emanating in waves. "Tell me everything you know about Kai Chisaki and the girl," demanded Izuku, his voice icy and authoritative. The men, terrified, began to speak. "Don't hurt us," one of them begged. "Chisaki is in a warehouse north of here. He has the girl in a secret room. We don't know anything else, we swear." "Please, don't kill us," added the other, his voice trembling. Izuku knocked them unconscious and headed to a building opposite the warehouse, which was actually Chisaki's hideout. For several days, he carefully planned his attack against Chisaki and his group, determined to put an end to their atrocities once and for all. He spent that time studying every entrance and exit, analyzing the guards' patterns, and preparing a meticulous strategy to take down the criminal group. One night, while watching from his hiding place, he felt a presence beside him. "Izuku, what are you doing here?" asked a familiar voice. It was Lady Nagant, who had secretly followed him. "Lady Nagant, what are you doing here?" responded Izuku, surprised. "It's dangerous. I've seen you wandering around at night, and I got worried." "What are you planning?" asked Lady Nagant with concern in her eyes. Izuku sighed and explained the situation. "I was looking for a way to save Mary's life. But in my search, I discovered that a villain named Chisaki is using a girl for his experiments." Izuku's eyes sharpened with anger. "I can't allow that little girl to keep suffering." Lady Nagant looked at him with determination. "I won't let you do this alone. I'll help you." "I can't put you in danger," protested Izuku. "This is something I have to do alone. I don't care. Today, I'll take Rumi's place, and we'll beat the unstoppable team." Nagant smiled and then pointed her weapon at Izuku, looking at him intently. "No matter how dangerous it is, I won't abandon you, Izuku," insisted Lady Nagant. Izuku smiled, as Rumi's friends always had something he liked. "All right, but we have to be very careful." Together, they perfected the plan. Finally, the night of the attack arrived. Izuku infiltrated the organization's hideout, moving stealthily through the shadows. As he entered, the lights flickered on, revealing the organization's army in the 8 precepts of death, each with quirks that complicated his combat abilities. "So, you're the one who's been lurking around here," said Chisaki, his voice cold and calculating. "I won't let you ruin my plans. I won't let you keep torturing that girl," Izuku replied, adopting a combat stance. The battle began with ferocious intensity. The 8 precepts of death attacked in coordination, each using their quirk to create a barrier of defense and attack. Izuku, using his acquired experience and skills, dodged and counterattacked with precision. "You can't beat me," one of the precepts shouted, launching an energy attack. Izuku dodged and countered with a direct hit, knocking him down. "If that's all you've got, then you won't defeat me," Izuku responded, continuing to fight. Some henchmen hiding in the shadows were about to shoot, but every bullet was intercepted by Lady Nagant's shots. "Trash like you deserves to die," said the heroine seriously. With perfect shots, she pierced the villain's knees and hands, rendering them no threat to her friend. Izuku's confrontation grew tougher as the precepts began using more desperate tactics. He took some hits, but his superhuman resilience kept him standing, and his friend's long-range support gave him the edge needed to face the villains. One villain, beaten and on the ground, grinned sadistically. Heh, even if you save her, that girl is already broken. She'll never live a normal life, he sneered. Izuku was so enraged that he stomped, severing the man's right leg, and delivered a punch that shattered his face, leaving him unconscious. Izuku cursed himself, his strength was meant to protect the weak, and knowing a child was suffering infuriated him. Aerk! Izuku screamed as his body grew, taking the full form of his quirk. Finally, after an intense fight, more of a beatdown of the villains still standing, Izuku managed to defeat them all. He now had Kai Chisaki unconscious at his feet. His face reflected a mixture of disdain and anger toward the villain, kicking him a few times, a gesture that showed his disgust. You deserve much worse for being such a bastard, Izuku muttered, then entered the warehouse and headed to a dark room that reeked of decay. Upon entering, his blood boiled with rage. In a corner, a small girl, about 6 years old, was covered in blood, her clothes torn, and bruises all over her body. The sight was so repulsive that Izuku's stomach churned, but what hurt him the most was the fear and hatred in the girl's eyes. Don't be afraid, Izuku said softly, removing his hood to show his face. The girl began to scream at him to leave, her voice full of panic. Go away. Leave me alone, she screamed, backing away until she tripped and fell to the ground. Please, listen to me, Izuku pleaded calmly. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm here to help you. The girl looked at him with distrust, still backing away as he approached. Really? The girl whispered. But how can I trust you? She asked, her voice trembling. Everyone has been cruel to me. How do I know you're different? Izuku, with a sad look, slowly approached and dropped his animal transformation. I understand you're scared, he said softly. But I promise I'm not like them. The girl continued to look at him with distrust, her body trembling with fear. Why should you care what happens to me? She asked. No one has cared about me before, and no one ever will. Izuku shook his head. That's easy to answer, and it's because I'm a hero, Izuku replied, moving a little closer. And heroes protect the innocent. And today, I want to help you. Today, I will be your hero. Still not entirely trusting, the girl stopped retreating. Are you really a hero? She asked with a bit of hope in her voice. Yes, affirmed Izuku, showing a warm smile. And I'm here to save you. Will you let me help you? The girl hesitated but nodded slightly. Izuku approached slowly, and Eri, scared by his proximity, started to struggle. Izuku hugged her gently. She thrashed violently, trying to break free from the embrace, but Izuku kept holding her. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm a hero, and I never did enough to stop the actions of the villains who hurt you. The girl was surprised because no one had ever apologized to her, so she stopped struggling, feeling something strange inside. She began to sob. Why are you apologizing? She asked through tears. It's not your fault. It's my responsibility, said Izuku with sadness. As a hero, I have to protect the innocent. I promise you, from now on, no one will hurt you. Through tears, the girl told him all the cruel things that had been done to her and how she could no longer bear to live, wishing to end her suffering. I can't take it anymore, she sobbed. Everything hurts, and I don't want to live like this anymore. This life is horrible. Izuku, with tears in his eyes, promised her, from now on, I will protect you. I know it will be difficult, but I want you to be happy. I'm truly sorry, a girl like you shouldn't harbor hatred in her eyes. I swear by my ancestors that no one else will hurt you. The girl looked at Izuku with a mixture of disbelief and hope. Really? She asked, her voice trembling. Really, affirmed Izuku, gently stroking her hair. I won't let anyone hurt you ever again. Eri, said the girl softly, revealing her name. My name is Eri. Izuku smiled, feeling that he was making progress. That's a beautiful name, Eri. Now, let's get you out of here. Eri, exhausted and emotionally overwhelmed, allowed herself to be guided by Izuku's words. For the first time in a long while, she felt a small spark of trust inside her. Izuku, carrying her gently, left the hideout and met his friend Kana, who had already tied up all the villains. "My incredible teammate has already taken care of the bad guys," said Izuku with a smile. "We are safe now." "Really?" asked Eri, looking around cautiously and seeing it was true. "Yes, it's all over," confirmed Kana, smiling kindly at the girl. "You don't have to be afraid anymore." "Mission accomplished, and thank you for everything, Lady Nagant," said Izuku, smiling at his friend. "Good job, Izuku," responded Kana, happy to help her friend and the partner of her best friend. She saw why her friend fell in love with Izuku. Even though it wasn't his obligation, he sacrificed himself to protect a complete stranger. "Let's take her to a safe place now," said Izuku. As they walked, Eri clung to Izuku, feeling for the first time in a long while that maybe, just maybe, she could be safe. On the way, Kana parted ways with Izuku, as she had to handle the paperwork and give some statements to the police. Izuku thanked her, aware that since he was not yet an official hero, he could get into trouble. "Thank you, Kana. I don't know what I would have done without your help today," said Izuku. "Don't worry, Izuku. You know I'll always be there to support you," responded Kana, patting him on the shoulder. "See you later." As they walked toward his home, Eri, still somewhat scared, spoke in a whisper. "Why are you doing this for me?" Izuku stopped for a moment, looking at Eri tenderly. "Because you are an innocent child and you deserve to be happy. No one should go through what you have." Eri remained silent, absorbing his words. Izuku knew that although the road to the girl's recovery would be long and difficult, he was determined to be by her side. He remembered how he himself had been taken in as a baby by his master Shifu when he was abandoned. Although the circumstances were different and Eri had suffered, one thing was clear: he would take care of her because it was the right thing to do, and he felt connected to her in a way he couldn't describe. "Did you have someone to take care of you when you were little?" Eri suddenly asked, breaking the silence. Izuku nodded. "Yes, my master Shifu. He found me when I was a baby and raised me. He taught me everything I know about martial arts, but in this life, I was fortunate to have my mother." Eri didn't fully understand the response and looked at him with curious eyes. "Do you think I can be happy someday too?" Izuku smiled, gently squeezing her hand. "I know you will. Together, we'll overcome this. I promise I'll be by your side every step of the way." Elsewhere, in a distant place, even from that reality, there was a woman with a horn and white hair observing Izuku through a screen. "Hee, no matter which world you're in, Father, you always find and protect me, a canonical event that almost always comes true," she murmured with a melancholic smile. Suddenly, a door opened behind her and a young man with white hair entered, kneeling in respect. "Mission completed. It seems the Izuku from Earth 0025 will be fine, and I left insurance in case his life is ever in danger," the young man reported firmly. The woman, still seated, gestured for him to leave. As the young man exited, she smiled affectionately. "I bet he won't even use it for himself," she thought to herself, knowing her father well enough to recognize the qualities in all Izukus, even if this one wasn't him. She stood up and with a snap of her fingers, hundreds of screens appeared around her, displaying countless realities. With a quick and precise gaze, she checked each one to ensure there were no strange anomalies. It was then that one screen caught her attention. With a wave of her hand, the screen enlarged, and she saw something that deeply troubled her. "Summon a traveler who is available and have them come immediately. It's time to send Rei Todoroki. Her intervention will prevent this tragedy," she ordered through the intercom, then angrily turned off the screen at what she had seen. Before the screen completely turned off, she saw a version of Izuku who had been subjected to various experiments and had become a bloodthirsty Nomu. The woman with white hair showed a mixture of sadness and anger on her face. She then sat back down, focusing once again on the development of Izuku Leopardo, or as she preferred to call him, Tailong. Back with Izuku, carrying a sleeping Eri in his arms, he took her home, knowing that taking her to a hospital would raise suspicions. Upon arrival, Inko and Rumi looked at him seriously. They had already noticed Izuku's nocturnal escapades. "Izuku, what have you done this time?" asked Inko, her voice filled with concern. When Mirko was about to scold him, she saw the state of the girl and became worried. "What happened to her?" Rumi asked, her voice trembling with concern. Izuku summarized what he had done, describing his confrontation with Chisaki and how he had rescued Eri. Rumi and Inko approached the girl, cleaning off the dried blood and changing her clothes after giving her a bath. Eri barely stirred, too exhausted to react. "Poor girl," murmured Inko, gently stroking Eri's hair. After Rumi and Inko let the girl rest, Rumi turned to Izuku, embracing him tightly. Her shoulders shook as she sobbed. "Izuku, please, don't ever do anything so risky again," she pleaded, her voice filled with anguish. Izuku hugged her tightly, feeling guilty. "I'm sorry, Rumi. I couldn't let them continue to hurt her. But I promise I'll be more careful," he said, kissing her on the forehead. Inko joined the embrace, wrapping her arms around them both. "We're proud of you, Izuku, but we don't want to lose you," Inko said, her voice breaking at the thought of losing the person she cherished most. "They won't lose me. I am strong, and I will do whatever it takes to protect everyone, including you," Izuku replied with determination in his voice. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the white-haired woman continued to observe Izuku's progress, her face displaying a mix of pride and concern. "You're strong, Izuku, but the true test is yet to come," she murmured to herself, watching the face of her father from another reality on the screen. "I hope you can find happiness." Back at home, Izuku, Inko, and Rumi remained embraced, while little Eri rested on a bed, safe for the first time in a long while. Izuku wouldn't give up on finding a cure for Mary. He knew his mission was far from over, but for now, he would cherish this moment with his family and the safe little Eri. And that, to him, was the most important thing. After a while in that emotional situation, everyone went to sleep. Rumi and Izuku shared the same bed. Rumi noticed Izuku couldn't sleep and decided to talk to him. "Izuku, what's troubling you?" she asked gently, stroking his cheek. Izuku sighed and looked at the ceiling, his eyes filled with frustration and despair. "I've searched all over Japan, Rumi. I haven't found anything that can cure Mary. I feel powerless," he confessed with a trembling voice. Rumi lowered her gaze sadly, forcing a smile to hide her own pain. "Hee, at least we know we did everything possible," Rumi said. Izuku observed her and could see she was putting on a tough front to hold back tears. "You don't have to be strong when you don't really feel that way, Rumi," Izuku gently scolded her. "It's okay to feel sad and cry." Izuku's words broke Rumi's emotional barriers, and she began to sob. "I don't want to lose my mother, Izuku. I feel guilty. She always took care of me so much that she neglected her own health. Now she could die and I can't do anything to stop it," she said between tears. Izuku hugged her tightly, trying to comfort her. "Rumi, I will do everything in my power to save Mary. Even if I have to make a pact with a demon, I will do it if it means seeing my lovely girlfriend's beautiful smile again." Rumi, despite her sadness, couldn't help but laugh a little. "Even in situations like this, you always find a way to make me laugh, Izuku. You're amazing," she said, wiping her tears. Izuku smiled and kissed her forehead. "I promise I won't give up. I will find a way to save Mary, no matter what," he affirmed, looking at her with unwavering resolve. "I know. I always believe in you, Izuku," Rumi replied, hugging him even tighter. They both stayed silent, embraced, and eventually fell asleep. The next day, Izuku decided to continue his search. But this time, he wouldn't be alone. Rumi and he had decided to search for a cure together. "Let's look for someone who might have information about alternative cures. Maybe some old hero knows something," Rumi suggested, a spark of hope in her eyes. Izuku nodded, determined. We'll explore every corner of this country, and if necessary, we'll travel abroad. We won't stop until we find a solution, he said with determination. Back at home, Eri began to slowly adapt to her new surroundings. Inko and Mary made sure she was comfortable and safe. The little girl started to smile timidly, something she hadn't done in a long time. Several days had passed. One afternoon, while they were in the garden, Eri approached Izuku. "Why did you save me?" she asked with a barely audible voice. Izuku crouched down to her level and smiled warmly. "I think I already told you, but I'll say it again. Because it's the right thing to do. And besides, if I didn't, then I wouldn't be worthy of being called a hero. No one deserves to suffer or live through what you went through. I want you to have a happy life, full of love and laughter," he replied sincerely. Eri looked at him with tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Izuku. I promise I will be happy," she said, hugging him tightly. Izuku felt immense warmth in his heart, knowing he had done the right thing. As night fell, in a dark corner of the city, a looming and shadowy figure watched from the shadows. His eyes gleamed with a mix of malice and cunning as he followed Izuku's every move with morbid interest. All for One, the most feared and powerful villain, had deduced that Izuku's strength came from his quirk and had plans to obtain it for himself. "This boy. His power is immense. He could even pose a threat to me," muttered All for One, his voice resonating with a maniacal tone that sent chills to anyone who heard it. "All that power will be mine." He turned slowly, his eyes scanning the dark alley as he contemplated his next steps. "Izuku Shimura," he said disdainfully, savoring the name like it was prey. "Not only will I kill you, but your mother will accompany you. With the two of you, any legacy of Nana Shimura will be lost." A chilling laughter filled the dark alley, resonating between the brick walls and echoing into the cold night. His laughter was hollow and soulless, the kind that creeps into your dreams and becomes your worst nightmare. "Hee, I delight in imagining the despair in his eyes," AFO spoke aloud, as if sharing his thoughts with an invisible companion. "To see his mother fall before him. It will be a delightful spectacle. And then, when everything is lost to him, I will snatch his quirk and leave him in utter misery, but not before killing what he loves most before his very eyes." From his hands, a photograph of Mirko appeared, only to burst into flames seconds later, burning completely. His eyes narrowed as he contemplated the future he had planned. "Izuku Shimura has no idea of the power he possesses. But I will use it to dominate everything. And when I'm done, there won't be a trace of hope left in this world." Suddenly, a hooded figure appeared from the shadows. They knelt before AFO, reporting in a voice devoid of emotion, "Sir, we have several Nomu hidden around Izuku's mother's residence. We've learned their schedules and know the hours when only Inko and Mirko's mother are alone in the house. We await your signal, and eliminating them won't be a problem." "Excellent," AFO responded with a cruel smile. "I want you to eliminate them yourself. Start with Mirko's mother, and then kill Inko. I want Izuku to feel true pain. I want him to know what it's like to lose a loved one, and what better way than by his own father's hand, don't you think, my pet?" "Yes, sir," the hooded figure replied. Just as a gust of wind passed by, revealing a humanoid tiger-faced creature with a scar across its left eye, before disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. AFO was alone again, relishing the feeling of absolute control. "You will meet the same fate as your father, Izuku. You will be my puppet to command, but first, I will make you suffer," he murmured, his words dripping with venom and hatred. "And when all is lost, you will come to me, begging for a swift death." He turned away and vanished into the shadows, leaving behind an atmosphere of pure terror. The darkness seemed denser where he had been, as if his presence had absorbed the little light of the night. Those passing by could feel a deep sense of unease. AFO was not just a villain, he was a force of nature, a being whose evil knew no bounds. Izuku would have to face this monster, and hopefully emerge alive. End of the story.
Hello everyone. If there are any issues with the English translation, I apologize. I'm trying my best to ensure that the English version is as good as possible. Remember to support the channel so we can continue providing the English version.